Despite what many would say is an enormous revolution within one generation, there's still a lot of misogyny out there. There's still a large proportion of people trying to hold on to the idea of women being a backdrop for society, and some nervousness from women as a result. A sense of we have to be careful all the time because otherwise we're perceived as threatening. That's something we wanted to address. We wanted Ruth to be bold and not to care for PJ's good opinion. Those are words from co-screenwriter Anna Campion on Jane Campion's 1999 film, Holy Smoke. Seeing Faces in Movies is a podcast for each month that focuses on the works of a different director or cinematographer. And each week I invite a guest on to discuss the film and the artist's filmography. I'm your host, Felicia Maroney, and today we're talking Holy Smoke. So quick synopsis of the film is, Ruth's been brainwashed by a guru in Delhi, India. Her parents and Sydney hire a specialist in reversing this. Ruth is tricked to return to Australia and is isolated in an outback cabin with the specialist. It gets messy. There's a couple taglines for this film that are quite funny. So the first one is, sex captive in desert hideaway, young beauty seduced by macho American, twice her age. The second one is, has writer-director Jane Campion gone too far? The film stars Kate Winslet as Ruth, Harvey Keitel as PJ Waters, Julie Hamilton as Mum, Sophie Lee as Yvonne, and Dan Wiley as Robbie. It's written by Jane Campion and Anna Campion, cinematography by Dion Beebe, directed by Jane Campion, edited by Veronica Genet, and music by Angelo Badalamenti. Today my guest is Eugina Gelbelman, and she's been on the show twice now. This is her third time. Definitely recommend you go back and listen to our first episode together on Trouble Every Day, which surprised me. It's one of the most listened to episodes, and I wasn't, aware that there were so many Cledini heads out there. So you got to get on the train. And then Dress to Kill, which is also another episode that's like one of the most listened to episodes. So I'm feeling like you're my good luck charm for this show. So thank you so much for coming on for a third time. I'm really excited to have you back.
I'm excited to be here. I love doing this.
Well, we're talking about Holy Smoke today. And before we get into that, as I said, you've been on the show before. Again, people should go back and listen to your background on film and how you got into watching films, making films, talking about films. So instead, I will ask if you've seen anything in the last couple of weeks, months that you want to recommend to the listeners, a couple films that they should add to their watch list.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna be 33 soon, so I have dementia already. I had to go through my letterboxd very quickly to remind myself what I've been watching. And I have 3 films. So I like Passages, Ira Sachs.
Okay.
Initially, so yeah, Passages. What's the other one? The Getaway. Not the one with Steve McQueen.
Okay.
With Alec Baldwin, not to bring up Alec Baldwin, but The Getaway. And the third one I like, Fair Play. Did I mention Fair Play already? No, right?
No. Is that the one with
It's with your guy. For something on Netflix, it really was like above top tier Netflix.
Oh yeah. Okay. I forgot it was on Netflix, so
it's like it's a genuine kind of erotic style thriller. I was shocked. I was like, this is really not bad.
Oh, okay. Well, if you give it the okay, then I definitely will like it because you're my measuring, meter for that. Yeah, I haven't seen Passages yet. I know it's all over the internet, the movie. I have movies, so I will watch it eventually.
I think you'll like it. Sort of also has that vibe of a bit of it's like a European art erotic thriller type. There's nothing really thrilling or erotic. No, I'm just kidding. It's erotic. There's good sex in that film.
That's good.
It is very depressing for a straight woman to watch, though. Not to spoil that film, but it's like spoiling it. But it's 2 men who are in a relationship, and they bring in Adele to fix their Sharpaloos, and it's just so depressing for her.
Oh gosh. Well, that's the French for you. I know that's definitely been on my list to catch up on. So I'm excited for that. Those are all good 3 recommendations. In terms of Campion, I know that you're a big fan, as am I. Do you recall the first time you watched Holy Smoke and like what your initial thoughts were on the film?
I think it was when I was just looking through the Criterion channel, because I know you're a Criterion channel champion. Like, you're very good going through those films. I'm more of I start films on there and then I'm just like, oh, and some films I never finish. So
Yeah,
I was
that's fair.
Criterion, and I think they had Jane Campion like highlighted, looking for her films to watch that I hadn't seen. And I hadn't seen Holy Smoke yet. I'd already seen The Piano and In the Cub. I was like, what's this? And I saw Kate Winslet and I saw Harvey Keitel. I was like, this looks like something. I think it was maybe a year, 2 years ago or something that I first saw this movie. And I was really like taken with it. I've seen it 3 times now. I was like, this is unique. This is something else. I haven't seen anything like this really. So it's one of them, actually, to be honest, it's one of her like really underrated films, I think.
I think so too. And I think a lot of people are kind of put off by it on their first watch, which I think is fair, but it's something that will grow on you.
Yeah.
Because I think when people think of Campion, they think of period pieces and it's grandiose, like landscapes, which we do get in this. There's a lot of landscape shots, but it's not a period piece. It's set in the time that it was shot.
Very specifically 90s type thing.
Yes. To the point where like the font in the opening credits or like the titles in between. I had another guest on who was mentioning because they had just watched Holy Smoke and they were like, oh, the Matrix writing in it was so of the time. And I was like, yep.
Oh yeah, I forgot the font. Yeah, you're right.
That was a time. It's a time capsule, but I think it's still relatable.
Yeah, this is how old we are. It's almost a period piece, basically.
It honestly, at this point, it is a period piece.
Oh God.
I know.
Yeah, the style, the clothes people were wearing, it's all very specific to an era that is gone.
Truly. And honestly, I don't miss it. I don't miss that era at all. It's I miss some things, but the clothing, no.
Yeah, not the clothing, yeah.
We can pass on that.
There was something even sweet about the 90s.
I do kind of wish I had been like a teenager in the 90s, but then I would actually be old now. So
both old, yeah.
now I just like put it in my face. Now to the point where it used to be like we would say, we were born in the 90s and everyone thought we were young. And it's like being born in the 90s is not young anymore.
It's that transition has been, I'm still not completely reconciled to being an old person.
No, truly. Once I hit 30 and during the pandemic, I was like, well, I guess it's over now.
It's over. There's something interesting in life after proverbial death.
Yeah.
We can tell the kids to get off our lawn now. It's fun.
I know. I just find myself so annoyed by everything at this rate.
Me too.
I'm
100%.
like,
everything's annoying.
I'm just annoyed. So we can get into Holy Smoke. I kind of wanted to start on the fact that this is a film. If you break it down to the basics, if you had to give kind of like a very quick synopsis of this, it's about a white woman, an Australian woman, played by Kate Winslet. She goes to India. She's going there with some friends, and I don't know that she's going there to find herself, but she ends up finding herself. She adopts a culture through finding herself. And then that leads to the second half of the story, which is when Harvey Keitel's character comes and essentially tries to rip that away from her because her family wants that. But we get a lot of films and a lot of stories, books, of, I don't even want to just say white women. It just could be North American people or people from specific parts of the world who go to another part of the world to find themselves.
Yeah.
And they see the culture there as a sense of liberation because it's so different from what they're used to. How do you feel that that's treated in this film? Do you feel that Campion or that character is kind of demeaning the culture, or they're not taking it seriously, or you think it's being celebrated and it's the other people who are looking down on the culture?
Well, one of the things I noticed the third time was that there's a shifting tone in the film. Like it's always there's not a stable tone, because sometimes I feel like it's funny, like it's fun of Kate Winslet's character, like Ruth. It's making fun of her character a little bit. And it shifts, like she shifts the making fun of people from different characters to the point where it's hard for me to pinpoint if she's making fun of the Winslet character until it becomes sort of serious later in the film. Or, I mean, the culture, I think the way she shows the culture when she's in India is through her Australian lens, like through her point of view. So like the way that she shows it to be so terrifying and, you know, dirty and what, I think that's almost exaggerated. Like that, maybe I'm giving her too much credit. I don't think that's genuinely Jane Campion's POV on India, unless it is, I don't know. But the way I read it was it's through the lens of an Australian, maybe even through her mother. Because when Ruth, when Kate Winslet is first in India, there's sort of a magic to it and it's sort of beautiful and free and whatever. But when her mother visits, there's a totally different POV on India. Like it's this terrifying place. But it's hard to pinpoint really what the opinion is because it's so it feels ambiguous a little bit. I don't know. Sometimes it feels like it's making fun of Winslet. Sometimes it feels like it's making fun. I don't know. But there's to me, it felt sometimes comedic, sometimes serious. And it shifted around, so I honestly can't say I know what what exactly what her approach was.
I think that's totally fair, and I definitely agree. There's times where I do think that she is kind of pointing out that Ruth is a bit silly, and it's just so, you know, cliched for her type of person coming from. I don't know that she's that privileged or well off, but she's not. She's comfortable, and then going there to go find yourself. So I think she is making fun of that, but that shift when the mother comes, it's like a whole different India that we're seeing. It's because that's how the mother is seeing India. I also don't think, again, can't speak for her unless she wants to come on the podcast and rectify what we're saying. But I don't think that she's judging India. I think she's judging the characters while they're in that place.
There's something silly in the way she portrays almost all of the characters. Like there's a real comedic, to me, I noticed something like genuinely, like it's not a comedy, but there was a silly way that she treats the mom, the dad, Kate Winslet, Harvey Keitel, all of them, her friends. They're all kind of sort of silly.
Oh, I think it is. It's definitely one of her sillier movies, and it kind of harkens back to her earlier work. Like Sweetie, that is also dark, but it's silly. And I think that was like a complaint that a lot of people had because they hadn't seen a lot of her earlier work. They'd seen like The Piano onwards. And I thought that she was very serious. So when Holy Smoke came about, they were like, what's this? Why is there like these very 90s, you know, comedic moments? And I'm like, well, you kind of, one, she's also allowed to just have fun. She doesn't have to be depressing all the time. And two, she has done this before in the past.
I still need to see it.
Sweetie is a lot. It's good, but it's like
I'm scared.
It's a lot to take in. Yeah. I watched it, I think in that same series that you would have watched Holy Smoke and I would have watched Sweetie.
Yeah.
Because I was like, let me start, you know, earlier or like an early one that I hadn't seen. And I was like, wow, this makes me super uncomfortable. I think it makes me more uncomfortable than In the Cut, and this one, Sweetie does, for sure.
Oh no, that's not very true.
Yeah, I always tell people, I'm like, maybe wait till you've watched a couple others before you get to Sweetie.
I know, I feel like I've watched as many as I could. Now I can't avoid it anymore.
Yeah, no, I think you'll be able to appreciate it, but it's definitely an interesting watch for sure. I do appreciate that Campion kind of took a stance. I think it is nuanced, but I don't think she's being like, I'm not going to have an opinion about what these characters are doing. I think she's pretty much kind of condemning. Well, condemning might be a harsh word, but placing some sort of thought and judgment on each of these characters and their decisions throughout, because they all deserve some sort of judgment. Because even Ruth, who's really just being kind of dragged through the mud, she does get called out for things that she needs to be called out for. And
For
I do
sure.
appreciate that because she is being a bit bratty, and sometimes I'm almost like 99% on Ruth's side, but there's some things that she needs to be called out for.
Exactly. Yeah. It's sort of like, I think she's maybe, I don't know why lampooning jumped into my brain. That's not the best word. But she's sort of lampooning a bit the concept of going to a Far Eastern country and then finding yourself, that sort of tradition. It's sort of a bit of a joke because she shows at the end of the day that Ruth is, well, at the end of the day, Ruth and Harvey, they change, but at least after she comes back from India, she's kind of the same shitty person she was before she went.
I think she's using it as a veil
Yeah, exactly.
to justify her behavior. But
Yeah.
if we get a bit into story-wise, like she's there and her friend leaves and comes back because it was just supposed to be a trip. So they were obviously coming back. The friend tells her parents that she's still there and is worried about her. Essentially tells them that she's been wrapped up in some cult. And the parents decide that they're going to go get her and they're going to hire someone to help deprogram her from the cult. But the mom goes over and she's like, the only way she's going to come back is if I tell, essentially that the dad is dying.
Yeah.
The show, when she goes over and she manages to get her, she still doesn't want to come back, but the mom has a full-on panic attack because she's so uncomfortable being in this other world that she's not used to.
One of the really funny moments for me in the film is when they're waiting for the plane to get on the plane. The mother is in the bed and the mom's like, oh, thank God it's Qantas. I thought that was funny.
It's just like everyone knows people like her mom or her family. And in their mind, they mean well, but they're going about it in a problematic way.
Yeah.
I don't think they're bad people. They're just ignorant is probably the best word.
Yeah, the mother, like when she asks her mother, what do you think is the purpose of your life? And the mom starts talking this ridiculous stuff. She's like, I think about stuff. I think about the planets or something.
Yeah.
Like clearly the mom has never thought about anything.
No. Truly, she's just living her day to day the same way. She's like, this is
And there's something sad and sweet about it too. It's just like this lady who's, in her little life in Australia with her family, and that's fine too.
Yeah. So it is interesting that first kind of act, essentially, of the back and forth of India, but they eventually get Ruth home. There's an intervention at that point because she sees her dad. And that scene is very interesting to me where she wants to go see her dad. She thinks he's in bed, sick and dying, and discovers he's not. He's just playing golf. This man could care less that, she's going to find out this way. And then they essentially stage an intervention. How did you read that scene with the dad? Because I thought it was interesting that he obviously, right from the beginning, was uncomfortable with the thought of the mom lying to her about it. But then he seems angry and annoyed with Ruth also for them having to do it in the first place. He's pretty rough with her verbally in that scene. How did you read their interaction?
I felt the dad was a very realistic character. Like the way that guy, I don't know the actor's name, but the way he played it just seemed kind of realistic to me. Like he's always asking how much it's going to cost.
Yeah.
Leave her there, And clearly she had problems with her dad. Like clearly there was a daddy issues there. And the way that dad played it felt real to me. I don't know, as someone who has a few daddy issues, like that feels honest.
It did feel honest. Yeah.
And that he was just like very upfront and gruff with her, and you can see how maybe he was developing her character, like the parts of her that are also sort of nasty and mean spirited. You can see how that came from her dad.
Very much. Yeah. I think that's exactly that. I do think he's probably the most pragmatic one of the lot that includes, brothers and sister-in-laws who are acting a little bit reckless throughout this. He's the only one with the head on his shoulders. And maybe later on we'll discuss the very brief appearance from Pam Grier. She's also level-headed enough that
was so random. I loved it.
I know. I had forgotten on this watch. I was like, oh my God, I forgot Pam Grier was in this movie.
Yeah.
Not used enough.
Like 2 seconds.
I know. Well, so we've kind of talked about the beginning and that and Campion's take, but then we get a Campion fave. Harvey Keitel shows up.
Oh, she loves him.
She loves him, and she loves to, I think she loves to objectify this man more than anyone else has loved to objectify him. She really put him through the ringer in this one.
I mean, I thought, because I saw the piano first, I thought, wow, this is a lot. And then I saw Holy Smokes. I was like, what? Was this movie before or after the piano? I don't remember.
This is after. This is after.
Oh, this is after the piano. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, clearly they had some of the most insane things I've ever seen Harvey Keitel or any actor do.
Yeah.
Are in the two Jane Campion Harvey Keitel films. I'm like, this is something else.
I know.
I mean, I don't even know how she got all that out of him. That's incredible.
They must obviously have a really good relationship, and it's unfortunate. I mean, obviously he's still around, but he's at the point where the man wants to retire. He just wants to relax. So maybe there'll be another one. Who knows?
Maybe we can get the oldest.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Honestly, she would still objectify him. This man will be 90.
She would. That's cute.
She would like get on your knees. I don't care how long it takes you to get back up.
I would love that. Let's do it.
If she needs help writing, we're here and available.
Exactly. We can make something up.
Oh, trust me. I have enough waiting in the arsenal for that. But he's a independent contractor who is a cult deprogrammer, essentially.
He has a job I've never heard of.
Yeah, no one you never heard of, and you don't really want to ever meet someone in that situation because I don't know about you, but I find the idea of cults very disturbing. So
me too.
Which brings me to maybe I'll ask that after, but cults are a thing that we're all very much aware of, and there's been cults that have been bigger and more known, obviously, like the Manson cult, Jonestown, and all that, and more recently, that NXIVM one that was happening, partly in Canada, partly in the States, and so that made a big, wave in media, especially with a couple documentary series that came out. This film is dealing with that. I don't know that Ruth was in a cult. I don't know. As someone who's not familiar with the culture, I can't even speak to it. I don't know how you feel. Just as an outsider, do you feel that wasn't actually a cult, or this is something like more of a religious experience that she was, part of? Yeah, I don't know how you feel about that.
Well, I felt like within India, maybe whatever she joined was sort of normal.
Yeah.
Like, was a religion there. But for her, because she's so, well, it's an ashram, right? There's a lot of white people who like to do the ashram thing. But to them, it's so foreign that it almost is cult-like when they start to become a part of it. So necessarily it's more within the culture in India, it's more normal, but when it's exported to like these white people, they have a cult-like attachment to it. I don't know.
I think that's like perfectly put. Like that's better than I think that's what I was trying to vocalize, but couldn't get it out. And I think that's exactly that. Like, I don't think it's actually a cult, but yeah.
White people love exporting these Far Eastern cultural practices and turning it into something it isn't.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of cults that were influenced by Indian religion, Hinduism. And I think at one point in the film, Harvey Keitel points out to her that whatever the guru is preaching is just part of Hinduism. There's nothing special about it. He's like, it's literally part of the Hindu text. And then she ignores it. So that's what I felt like was happening.
I think it's exactly that. And that's why I think it's important that she showed those scenes of her there. discovering that and the change that we see in her, as opposed to it just being right off the bat that she's in that. Because then we would believe that she is in a cult, but she is in her own mind, like in some sort of cult that she is believing that's separate from what actually the teachings are. I don't think
Yeah.
she's even really listening to the teachings. I think
Oh,
she just thinks that she's a whole new woman and experiencing a whole new life.
yeah. Like she encounters the sights and sounds and smells of India. She's like, oh,
Yeah.
and forms an unhealthy sort of attachment to all of the stuff that is just normal Indian life and religion
Yeah.
and culture.
I think I'm glad that you said that because that was the thing. I was like, she's experiencing her own vision of what she thinks Indian
Yeah,
culture is, but it's not their everyday life. Like she had to live an everyday life there. She would
exactly.
likely, I'm not even saying that it's bad there. It's just that she's so unused to it that she would run back to Australia on her own accord.
She's much more like like she's running away from being middle class Australians like her parents, but she's more like them than I think she wants to be admitting, you know.
Very much. But Keitel's character essentially tells his name's PJ. Which
Oh
is
yeah,
funny.
PJ. That's such a weird name for a
I
man
don't
to.
know. I know. I was like, that's such a 90s thing where people would just call themselves like MJ, PJ. I'm like, okay.
I mean, especially Harvey Keitel.
Yeah,
A character played by Harvey Keitel being called PJ is insane.
I know. That's just Jane being like, let's just throw some flair in there for it.
Yeah, why not? Why
Yeah.
not? We're gonna put him in a dress later and lipstick. Why not? His
Oh
name is
yeah.
PJ.
We definitely will be putting him in a dress. But he tells the family it'll take him 3 days to deprogram her. And he gives them the breakdown, which is insane to think that you could deprogram someone from a cult in 3 days, knowing that that's obviously not factual in any sense that could happen. But he gives them the breakdown. He says that she needs to be separated from the family, and he takes her to some sort of hut in the middle of nowhere. As someone who has my own child, but even if I didn't, and Ruth is an adult, but I would, if I was already worried about her, I'm not going to send her off with some man called PJ in the middle of nowhere to get deprogrammed.
Good point. It's very sus. Yeah, it's not. He doesn't have a legitimate sounding profession. He's kind of just like a bullshit artist, basically. But
Essentially. Yeah.
yeah,
As we realize, as he works through his program that he's working through.
his program. Yeah,
But Ruth is essentially, this is where the dynamics, the power dynamics happen with this. And I think
yeah,
that Jane Campion is obsessed, and I say that lovingly, with power dynamics between men and women
he is.
and the
Yeah,
shifting of those power dynamics, because the assumption is obviously that has the power over her because he's the deprogrammer, but we
yeah,
find out it's the other way around. She has power over him, and she's constantly, yeah, it goes back and forth. But I think in the end, she obviously has some more power over him because she's more confident,
yeah.
oddly enough, than he is. How do you feel about the way it's treated in here in this film? Because, as you say, it goes back and forth. And the way that they both show their power is very distinct to their characters.
I thought it was interesting how initially, but yeah, no, you're right. Campion, she really does have a thing. She wants to see these sort of psychosexual manipulations between men and women,
Mhm.
and it feels like there's more than 3 shifts, but maybe it's just 3 shifts. Like he starts where he has the power, then she gets the power again, but she has the power at the end. I mean, she basically becomes to him like a manifestation of the divine
Mhm.
feminine, whatever. She's like the goddess basically. But he's definitely, I mean, he comes out at on the lower rung there in the psychosexual battle of wills. So it um, I thought it was really fun to like that part for me is the most exciting part of the film because maybe I have a similar obsession to Campion because I
Mhm.
like that sort of power play between like he's sort of the father figure and she is the searcher and this younger woman, but then she assumes the power as the younger woman. Then for a second he gets I don't know, it shifts sort of subtly kind of Like that whole second act, it shifts a lot.
It definitely does, because I think she utilizes her sexuality in a way to essentially call him out on his faults and his weakness, because she knows that this man will not be able to resist her, and he isn't, clearly.
She sees through his bullshit.
Yeah. And I think that part of her also wants to sleep with him too, just to be like, well, I can do it. And I know that it'll break his guard down for a bit. And then there's a power shift here and there. But essentially, when that scene, the big scene essentially where he's calling her out on being essentially a brat. He's saying, you're a brat. And he says that she needs to be nice. She needs to be,
kind.
And she gets upset, realizing that maybe she isn't actually kind. But then she's like, well, I can't let him have that win. So she switches it, and she uses what she knows best, which is this man cannot resist this, and I'm going to demean him in this way. And it's weird to say that putting him in a dress is demeaning, but it's demeaning for that character, because that's how he views it. How do you view that scene? Because that's a very important scene, and that leads to everything that happens in the end of this film.
Yeah, I mean, well, how I feel is I'm truly want to know the conversation. I wish I could hear the conversation between Jane Campion and Harvey Keitel around that scene, because I've never honestly witnessed an actor who has a reputation like him, particularly, being so vulnerable and exposed and weird for a female director. That's like next level shit.
Yeah.
Like that, because in my experience with actors anyway, usually they're very reluctant. Clearly, like, it's really, you have to be a next level male actor to like be that vulnerable in a film. Mm-hmm. So that's incredible to me on that level, on the filmmaking level. I'm like, holy shit. But also that scene, where she puts him in this dress and she puts the bow in.
Yeah.
I thought it was well acted. I mean, I could almost see them a little bit. I could see the actors almost breaking a little bit. I thought I could see them breaking a little bit, but I thought at the end it was very well acted. And I don't know, it's a powerful scene. Like, for me, that scene, the scene where she's naked and she pisses herself.
Yeah.
And there's a fire. I thought that scene, the scene where she dresses him in drag, basically, and then the scene where he sees her as the divine feminine, for me, those three scenes really stand out because they're so unique to this film. I don't know. And I haven't seen anyone approach this sort of psychosexual manipulation power plays in that way before. And I don't know if I think of another film that does that. No, I mean, I wanted to say turned on. I wasn't turned on by that scene, but I was like excited. I was like, holy shit, this is incredible. What is this?
It is. It's like, we're just not used to seeing that on screen. And as you said, just the confidence that Harvey Keitel has, the confidence in himself, confidence in his performance, and what he has in Jane Campion. He obviously has confidence in her to be able to do that. And that's such a beautiful, relationship. And I know we don't have to say it. Like, obviously we should be, it's weird to say allowing, but giving the opportunity for more women to make stories like this that are like stories that people want to see. It doesn't have to be realistic. It doesn't have to be just about overt feminism. I think this is a very feminist text, but it's also like, it's showing both sides of it. And I think Jane Campion's always been so good at showing both sides of the coin. And I think that's why her work stands out and is powerful. And we need more opportunities for directors to do that. I'm not even trashing on the women directors who get money, who are not telling those stories. You tell the story you want, but someone like a Campion or a Denis, or even her chaotic ass Brea,
oh god,
doing those stories. But I want to see those stories that are like pretty ugly.
I really want to see chaotic women filmmaking. Truly. There's not nearly enough of it. Not nearly enough.
No, even someone like a Lynn Ramsey, she's a little bit less chaotic, but she's telling stories that are very real and dark and honest. I need that.
And I'm also an Andrea Arnold. I'm also an Andrea Arnold ride or die stan, so I think she's also kind of doing it.
But they're just not getting money.
There's so much unexplored. Yeah, these women aren't getting, like, the weird women auteurs really aren't getting as much support within the industry as they should be getting.
No.
Like, they should be getting deals with, like, the way that Scorsese can get, like, a deal for, like, ridiculous amounts of money with these companies. It should be the same for, Campion's proved herself, obviously. All these women that we mentioned, they should be getting the same leeway to do this unhinged filmmaking.
Well, that's all I want. That's literally all I want.
Literally. Oh, yeah.
And like, even someone like, because I am covering Power of the Dog for this, and
oh yeah,
that was the first time I'd turn Netflix on in months, was to watch that movie, to rewatch it. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot this is a Netflix movie. And she won an Oscar for Best Director. Now, I don't know if personally she just wants to take a break, but my guess is she's probably still having a hard time funding an next project she wants to do. And it's like, the woman won Best Director.
I think that's 100% true, because when I heard that Nancy Meyers couldn't, get a deal done with Netflix because she wanted too, you can't hear my air quotations, but there's air quotations. She wanted too much money. I was like, that's insane. This is Nancy Meyers. At what point in a woman auteur's career does she get to just get money?
Never.
Never.
Just never.
So disappointing.
I can't think of a single woman who is just like automatically like, yeah, we're going to give you money. Like, even someone like a Kelly Reichardt who has to basically scramble for money. And she teaches, that her main job is teaching.
Yeah.
Because she's like, I'm not making money from these movies. I'm not getting money from these movies.
I mean, some directors have the similar, like, if you're kind of a niche artistic filmmaker, I think in general, it's harder to get money for stories that are outside of the whatever monolithic style of blockbuster film. But if you're a woman in particular making that kind of film, I mean, you're even less likely to get any money.
I know. We brought this up before on previous episode, but the fact that like Coppola and Francis Ford, male Coppola, had to fund his own movie. It's like, I'm sorry, there's no hope for a single.
Movies are dead. It's over. We're not back. We're not back.
We're really not. Especially with some of the movies I've been watching, trying to catch up on. We're not back.
I can watch a hyped up film, like from this year, a hyped up film, and I'm just like, what is this? What is this? Where's the hype coming from? I don't see it. Sometimes I see it, like Passages. I was like, okay, this is gonna be not great. And then I watched it and I was like, oh, I kind of don't like it, but it kind of creeped up on me and it grew on me. So I'm like, okay, you know what? This is actually good. Very hard to come across these days, a decent film. I'll be real. Very difficult.
It really is. And I think it's because we're not getting enough distinct voices out there telling as unique as you can be stories. So I don't know.
I feel like people are self-censoring. There's this weird, like, oh, I can't tell this story. Why can't you just tell the story? Self-finance. If you can self-finance. It's impossible, but if you can somehow.
It's true. And like, even with the campaign, and I absolutely adored Power of the Dog. I do think because it's a Netflix movie that she did have to self-censor a little bit, because I was like, you're getting to where I know you want to be, but you held back a little bit.
Held back. Yeah, that's
and it's unfortunate, but like, it also, thankfully, it's still on that platform so you can watch it and people do get to watch it. But I know that she did hold back.
Yeah, from knowing what she can do, she definitely was being restrained in that film.
Yeah. I mean, she still did provide us with.
It was still good, though. Still got to see Benedict Cumberbatch.
Didn't want it.
Yeah. Thank you, Jane Campion. Thank you. I didn't want it, but thank you.
Listen, I'm not going to be greedy. But in terms of this film, I think that she's putting herself fully out there. And I think that's why it's one of those movies that, one, a lot of people haven't seen of hers. And two, when people do watch it, they find it off-putting at first. And I think it's something that it is a grower, essentially.
To grow or not a shower.
Yeah. I mean, I liked it on my first watch for sure, but on a rewatch for this, I really appreciated what she was doing. I was like, this is like a
Yeah.
very powerful film, a very powerful story.
It took me the second and third time to really appreciate it. The first time I was like, okay, this is interesting. But then the second and third, I was like, wait a second. This is like, this is the work of art. This is a beautiful film.
It is. It really is. I hope at some point it gets some sort of like cult, resurgence. Someone will have to put it out. But she wrote this with her sister, and I think their voices are all over it. And I think it's just a beautiful film.
It's so specific to her. No one else could ever make the same film.
And that's what really makes her, if you want to use the term auteur, that's what makes her an auteur. That's
what does
her voice is it. One of the last things I wanted to ask you was about the epilogue in this film.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten about it because I always just think it ends with him seeing her. I was like, oh no, there's still a few minutes with
the epilogue was really weird.
Yeah. Essentially, they've been writing to each other, and we hear one exchange where he is now, we mentioned briefly Pam Grier. They were a couple together, and then they end up staying together, and they have kids. And Ruth has a partner, but Ruth and PJ, for some reason, didn't fully cut ties. She didn't say, hey, I'm upset that you tied me up in the back of your car. We can still be friends and write to each other. And they're telling each other that they're still each other's like true love, but they've moved on.
Yeah.
I am not a huge fan of the epilogue. I don't know what happened there. If that was tacked on.
Yeah, tacked on. It felt tacked on. I was like, you think the movie's over. They're riding into the sunset, basically. And then to eternity. They're riding into eternity. And that's a perfect place to end the film. And then there's this weird, like, well, and now they're both okay. And it's like, are they both okay, though?
No, because they don't sound like they are, and nor should they be. They need a little bit of therapy, especially Harvey Keitel, who definitely should not be a dad. I don't think so.
They trauma bonded. I guess they trauma bonded. I don't know. But yeah, it just seemed a little it seemed a little like an unrealistic additional thing that we didn't need it.
No, I don't think we did anyway. And I didn't read anything about it, but it is a Miramax movie. So I'm assuming this was a Weinstein edition.
Oh yeah, because Weinstein he's listed as a producer. It totally could have been a Weinstein thing.
Yeah, that was my guess. So like,
yeah, he really was a tyrant that way. Like he would get involved like in the endings and stuff. So that would make sense if that's what happened. It's probably what happened.
That's just another example of why he's a monster. Is that
I know
that epilogue?
There's something weird about God forbid I say anything even a little. He had taste enough to like distribute films like this, but at the same time, no taste to ruin stuff.
Yeah, I mean it's weird because Miramax is essentially the precursor to things like Neon A24. They were putting out a lot of independent, like thoughtful stuff. It just happens to be that the people behind it were absolute monsters.
Yeah,
so
that's very interesting.
How it works, unfortunately.
It's how it works. That is how it tends to work for some reason.
Yeah. Are there parts of the story or Campion's, imprint on this story that we haven't chatted about that you want to talk about?
I mean, I feel like we overall covered it. I'm not sure what, there's so many scenes that are so like strange and interesting. No, I think like we got it.
I feel the same way. Well, we can move to the last segment of the show then. Yeah. Same two questions as before. As someone as yourself who's seen quite a few Campion films, where do you recommend someone start?
Not this one.
No.
That might end it for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Piano probably.
Yeah. That's been everyone's. This is like the only person I've covered so far where everyone's answer was the exact same. And I'm like, yeah, you got to start with the piano because I think it shows you exactly what she has to offer.
Good entry.
And then you can go do the other stuff. It's also like, you should just watch the piano.
Just watch the piano. It's weird that that was not, the piano was not my first Campion. I don't even remember really what my first, I think In the Cut was.
Yeah, the piano wasn't my first one either. And I don't know what my first one might have been. I definitely watched, it might have been Sweetie.
Oh,
Like I
wow.
only recently, over the last like 4 or 5 years, started watching. Would have been Sweetie, and then I would have watched Power of the Dog came out 2021. I think I watched something else before that. I might have watched In the Cut before Power of the Dog.
Wow, you watched Sweetie first? That's intense.
Yeah, I know, but and it's weird because I still was like, yeah, I'll watch more of her stuff after that.
I know, you're nerves of steel, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I like to be disturbed, and I
Yeah,
like women who want to disturb me. So,
exactly.
but piano would have been a great spot to start off with for sure.
Remember, because we're both, as we mentioned, 90s products of the 90s. I remember
Hmm.
hearing about the piano when I was growing up. Like, I forgot when it won the Oscar, but I remember it. And I was like, wait, it felt like a missing piece of something. I was like, okay, I should watch
Yeah.
this. This was like this big film. And I was honestly shocked by how much I really did love the piano. I didn't expect to love it as much as I loved it.
I'm like hit or miss on certain period pieces of certain eras. I think when handled correctly with Jane, she just does it so beautifully. And even like I watched because with this series, I caught up on a couple that I hadn't seen. So I watched Bright Star finally, which I
Oh,
loved, and then I watched Portrait of a Lady, which I enjoyed
oh,
as well.
yeah, I started Portrait of a Lady and I stopped
It's
because
slow.
it's slow. Okay.
It's
Yeah.
slow. It's a slow burn throughout, but it is interesting what she's done. I think after you've watched a lot of her stuff, I think then you can appreciate
Yeah.
Portrait of a Lady. It's not my favorite. And then I watched An Angel at My Table too, which is just so depressing. I was like, man, I'm not having a good time.
I saw clips of that one in film school. I was like, this looks like I have to have prepared myself to really get through it.
Yeah, I had to like break it up into a couple watches because I was like, this is so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good, but it's just like, man.
But yeah, those are the three. I haven't Portrait of a Lady, Sweetie, and Angel at My Table. I still haven't gotten around.
I feel like that out of the three, you would probably appreciate Sweetie the most, but you'll probably be like, oh,
So, there,
okay.
so there's weird sex stuff in Sweetie, is what you're
Oh,
saying.
there definitely is. There
Okay. Then
definitely
I'll
is.
watch Sweetie.
But if you're pairing this one, Holy Smoke, with another film or films, what would you make it into a
Double.
double with bill with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe trying to think of another Kate Winslet. I honestly don't even know what the hell I'd pair it with. What would you pair it with? And then I'll keep thinking and I'll tell you.
No, no worries. I only picked one actually for this, and it's filmed by a Canadian director who's a woman called Lynn Stopkowicz, and it's called Kissed, and it's
Uh-huh.
from the 90s, and it's one that I always recommend to people for Canadian films, even though it's weird. It kind of harkens to the earlier Campion stuff that's weird, and I think it matches with this, but it's essentially a woman who works in the morgue and she discovers that she likes having sex with the bodies, and she has a whole awakening from that. I think you'd
Whoa.
love it. I watched that in school, actually, in university for I think it was either I took a feminist film course and I took then a Canadian film course, is either one of them.
Let me ask you something. What's up with Canadian films and necrophilia?
Don't know.
It's like a recurring.
Canadians, especially maybe not so much the more modern Canadian films, because I think we've lost our touch. No offense to any Canadian filmers now. I do like a
I
lot of them,
see.
but
So every time I watch a Canadian film, there's something with necrophilia. I swear to God. What is
people were
going
bored. I don't know. Like there's just not much to do in this country, so they were like, let's
on?
spice things up, I guess. But Kissed is the one I don't know. I when I was watching it on this one, I was like, oh man, I want to watch Kissed again. So it reminded me of that. Definitely a weird movie and not
Yeah.
for everyone, but anyone I know that has seen it was like, oh man, that movie. I feel like it's probably hard to find, to be honest.
I'll double bill it with Sweetie.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I think if you're gonna go all out Campion,
Oh God.
then you
Yeah.
might as well just kind of sit in like your discomfort for the rest of the day.
Sounds good. I actually thought of a film I feel like is similar to all the all this stuff. I would double bill Holy Smoke with Angela.
Okay.
It's called Angela. It's by Rebecca Miller.
Oh, okay.
It's who is Daniel Day-Lewis's wife.
Everything I've seen by her I liked.
It's not too far away from Kissed and this. It's definitely unhinged female filmmaking, that's for sure. Vincent Gallo shows up in it, funny enough.
Well, there you go. No, I haven't seen Angela, but I've seen quite a few of her other things that I have liked, and I think she's
good. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why I didn't think of her actually when we were talking about, women directors, because she's always pretty honest and likes to put men in situations.
The one with the dad, the one with Daniel Day-Lewis, what's that one called? The Ballad
of... Ballad of Jack and Rose. I love that one.
I love that movie. Yeah.
Oh man. That was her just being like, this is my husband and I'm gonna make him. It's not even like, it's a weird relationship that he has in that. It's like a weird character for Daniel Day-Lewis to play. But she was like, I'm gonna put him in a position that a position where he's not in power really at all.
No, he's not. Yeah. Film. I mean, I love when women directors just decide to castrate their husbands in movies. That's the best.
Truly, like, listen, it's another one that we both love. Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Oh yeah,
she also needs to be given more money for films because this woman is just doing the most.
Making Frankenstein, something with Frankenstein.
Oh really?
There's like I keep seeing updates on the Maggie Gyllenhaal film, and every time there's like this new big shot actor.
Yes. Okay. I did hear someone talk about that. I wasn't sure what it was, but I'll be there. I'll watch it.
Bride of Frankenstein.
Oh, okay.
That'll be interesting. Wait, who's in it for a second? Let me just look who's in this film. Christian Bale, Annette Bening, Jessie Buckley. I mean, any movie directed with Christian Bale in it, I'm already there.
Yeah, same.
And her husband obviously is in it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is good.
I love how she shoots her husband, as you said. Oh, she really just is like, yeah, I don't respect you in this movie right now. Yeah. Well, hey, I mean, for the listeners, we've offered you a huge number, and it's not even that big of a number of women directors that you should check out and are very worth your time. So there's no excuse now. We saved you a Google search.
This is Feminist Films 101.
Yeah. And this is like,
prep. This is the introductory course.
We really could. I feel like if we taught a feminism in film course, we'd shake it up.
We talk about the women no one wants to talk about. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Someone needs to give us a class. And they need to give us some money for a film too.
Yeah.
We do a lot of things.
A TV show, a TED Talk, all of it. We've making boatloads of money educating people about feminism.
But in the meantime, I guess we've got this until people open their wallets. But thank you so much for coming back on it. That was great. I had such a great time talking about a very interesting film and a woman that we both admire so much. So thank you.
And thank you again. I always love doing this. Have me back whenever you want.
Trust me, I will be. Seeing Faces in Movies is an official podcast of the Royal Film Club. It's hosted and edited by Felicia Maroney with intro music by Lamar Walker. If you like what you heard, let us know at seeingfacesinmovies.com or send us an email at seeingfacesinmovies@gmail.com. And while you're at it, please subscribe and rate the show wherever you listen to your podcast. And thank you for joining us for a Jane Campion series.